to my channel. So, do you ever like intend on doing something and you want it to be like perfect, and that sense of perfection just totally gets in your way? Yeah, been dealing with that. So I've recorded versions of this for, I don't even know, like so many times. And I really just was like getting in my way and overlooking at this video and trying to over edit it and blah blah blah, right? So I think like in my head I just had this idea of like what it's supposed to look like, whatever that means, right? So my intention is not to become the next big YouTube star or anything like that. My intention boils down to just giving you some information about mental health. And I think for a moment I like got away from my goal there. So everything just felt so fake and so just delivered in a way that isn't authentic to me. And I feel like I really want to be authentic for you guys and be who I am, so you can build a relationship with me and have an understanding and trust what I'm saying. So I'm just starting over, and I said, screw it, let's forget about lighting, let's forget about all the rest of it, and let's just try to get some content to you. I was in Chicago a couple of weeks ago now, and I did a couple of Facebook posts or Facebook lives on crowd anxiety and social anxiety. So if you want to head on over to my Facebook page and check out those lives, might be a little bit of a recap of what I want to talk about today, which is the difference between stress and anxiety. So let's get started. Stress and anxiety are often used interchangeably in our language right now, but there are some key differences between the two. So stress tends to be because of an identifiable stressor, right? So whether that be we got pulled over because we're speeding, or we have a deadline at work, right? We can point to this thing and say, this is why I'm feeling this way. And stress definitely has its list of side effects, right? There's definitely healthy stress, and stress can become toxic. It can cause stomach issues and headaches and heart issues and immunity issues. So I'm not saying that either stress or anxiety is better or worse than one another. I'm just saying that they're different. And another difference between stress and anxiety tends to be the impact and the length. So the impact of stress can be meaningful, it can be significant. With anxiety, it tends to be really impactful in your day-to-day functioning, whereas stress tends to not have that sort of impact, right? It doesn't prevent you from getting out of bed or socializing or doing what you need to be doing, going to work, taking care of your children. Anxiety, on the other hand, can definitely have that impact. It can impact your day-to-day functioning. And that's where, as a clinician, we start to look at, could this person be dealing with an anxiety disorder? So anxiety are responsible for developing or eliciting that anxiety response. We have the hippocampus and the amygdala, and I'm gonna try to put a brain somewhere around here, so hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, where these structures are within our brain, so you have an understanding of what's happening. So, two parts. The hippocampus. Hippocampus is responsible for taking in memory, specifically trauma memory, and encoding it and then storing it for long-term memory use, right? Response. So this hippocampus is responsible for taking in that information and then figuring out what to do with it. So say there's a little kid who is bitten by a dog when they're young, and the hippocampus takes that memory or takes that information and stores it in as memory. And later, when confronted with another dog that maybe looks similar or is acting aggressively, the hippocampus lets us remember that we've had this traumatic experience. And so therefore, the other part of the brain that's triggered is the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped structure deep in the brain. deep in the brain structure. Feels repetitive. But anyway, so the amygdala is deep in our brain structure, and it's responsible for that fight, flight, or freeze, right? So I'm sure that many of you have heard of those 3 Fs. So it's responsible for cortisol and norepinephrine, which help activate our muscles, help us fire those muscles, and so we can act, we can respond, we can deal with the threat that's being, that's coming at us. So in my example before, it would be that dog, right? So the hippocampus fires that alert system, or fires that memory, and the amygdala initiates the alert system, right? So when I'm talking to clients, I talk about that amygdala being sort of the warning center of our brain, and that anxiety response is really functional. It's really important to our survival. However, it does come sometimes with some impacts that are difficult to deal with in our day-to-day functioning, because our day-to-day functioning is being impacted, right? So we're struggling to get out of bed, we're struggling to interact socially, we're struggling to do our work or to focus, having low motivation. All of those things can be really significantly impactful on our life. And that is where we see the difference between stress and anxiety. Both of these human experiences are not inherently bad, right? They both serve a function for us. It's when these things get out of control, when we can no longer cope with them with our typical coping skills, that maybe we need to consider getting some help, that we need to consider talking to a therapist about what other things can I do to help alleviate my symptoms and help manage my stress or manage my anxiety, right? So another important thing to mention, I forgot to mention, about anxiety is that when our amygdala is in the driver's seat, so when we're responding in that way, our prefrontal cortex shuts down. And our prefrontal cortex is responsible for all of those executive functionings. So that processing and that thinking and the speech, the sort of adulting skills, they all shut down. So if you're talking to somebody who's experiencing anxiety and you ask them, well, why are you feeling anxious? And they say, I don't know. Or maybe they can't even articulate anything to you. It's not because they're trying to be difficult. It's simply because they may not know, that amygdala is so much in the driver's seat that their executive functioning is just gone and they can't access it. So one thing to do when that's happening, when your amygdala is firing, you're in that anxiety, that fight or flight response, is to practice relaxing your body, because we can't panic when we're in a relaxed body. So really, sitting back, taking some deep breaths all the way down into our diaphragm, taking some deep breaths, focusing on our muscles, focusing on your pelvic region, because we hold a lot of tension there. So really focusing on relaxing the hips, relaxing the butt, relaxing the pelvic floor, so that we can let all of that tension out. And then we can begin to hopefully make some executive functioning sort of level decisions, and maybe even begin to articulate why we're feeling the way we are. So anyway, I've blabbered on quite enough. That is a little bit about stress and anxiety. Please know what you're experiencing is normal. 40 million adults in the United States approximately have a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder. So you're definitely not alone. And anxiety is one of the more treatable conditions in terms of mental health. So please reach out for help, do your research, find a therapist who is familiar with anxiety and who can help you figure out what's best for you, right? Because you are in control and only you truly know what's going to work for you. Anyway, Please, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to hit that bell so you get notified when I post new content, and hit the subscribe button as well. Remember, let go of what's no longer serving you so that you too can rise like the lotus. See